You were told the Federal Reserve was created in 1913 to stop financial panics, to bring stability to the banking system. That's the official story. But what if that's the biggest financial lie ever sold? What if the real plan, hatched in secret on a private island by the world's richest men, wasn't to save the economy, but to capture it? Think about it. Why do you feel poorer every year, even as you work harder? Why does your money buy less? Why does every single financial crisis end with billionaires getting richer while you get the bill? That grinding feeling you have, that sense that the game is rigged, that you're running faster just to stay in the same place, that isn't your imagination. It's not an accident. It's a design, a 110-year-old plan. You feel that inflation. You feel that debt. You feel that instability nipping at your heels. That isn't a bug in the system. It's the feature. Today, we're not just pulling back the curtain. We're ripping it down. This is the story of the true mechanism the Fed was built to protect. It's not what you think. It's bigger, it's darker, and it's controlling the world right now. Drop a comment right now. Tell me where you're watching from. The algorithm hates this kind of truth, so we need to build our own community. And if you want the unfiltered truth the financial media won't touch, hit that subscribe button. You are not going to want to miss this. The textbook story starts in 1907. The panic, a failed attempt to corner the stock of United Copper, triggers a run on the banks. Chaos. The system freezes. There is no central bank to provide liquidity, emergency cash. So, the aging titan of Wall Street, J.P. Morgan, steps in. He gathers the country's top bankers, locks them in his library, and forces them to cough up the money to save the system. The narrative they sold to the public? See, the system is too unstable. We need a public institution, an elastic money supply, to prevent this chaos. Then, in 1910, a group of the exact same bankers J.P. Morgan had rounded up, plus Senator Nelson Aldrich, a Rockefeller man, fled to a private island off the coast of Georgia. Jekyll Island. They went in secret. They used code names. Together, they represented nearly 1/4 of the world's entire wealth. They spent a week designing the Federal Reserve. Think about how insane this is. The very people who profited from the instability, the very titans who held the entire country hostage, were the ones invited to write the solution. They didn't bring in academics, or consumer advocates, or small business owners. They brought in the apex predators of finance, and public institution that would be, wait for it, owned by private banks. They create a lender of last resort, a central bank that can provide liquidity, read, print money, to stop bank runs. It's pitched to Congress as a way to protect the little guy, stabilize the dollar, and serve the public. It's a nice story. Now, let's fast forward to 2008. A full century later, and the names on the buildings have barely changed. A different crisis. This time, it's not copper stocks, it's subprime mortgages. Financial trash bundled up and sold as AAA-rated gold. When the system freezes, who steps in? Not one man, but the institution those men created, the Federal Reserve. And what do? They gather the country's top bankers, the descendants of Morgan's empire, J.P. Morgan Chase, the Rockefellers, Citigroup, the Goldman Sachs dynasty, and they provide liquidity. They bail out the same banks that caused the crisis. They save their friends. A private club saving itself with public money, fabricated from thin air. Sound familiar? The 1907 narrative was, we need a public backstop to save Main Street. The 2008 reality was, the public backstop only saved Wall Street. Main Street got foreclosures. Let's go deeper. The Fed was sold as a tool to control the banks. But the banks created it. They own the regional Fed banks. It is the ultimate inside job. The fox isn't just guarding the henhouse. He built the henhouse and gave himself the only key. Every time there's a crisis, 1929, the S&L crisis, the dot-com bubble, 2008, 2020, the story is exactly the same. The banks take massive risks. They leverage up. They create complex, toxic assets nobody understands. When they win, they keep 100% of the profits. That's capitalism for them. When they lose, the Fed steps in. The lender of last resort turns on the printers. Trillions are created from nothing to plug the holes in their balance sheets. You pay the price through inflation. You get the bill. That's socialism for the banks. A system that privatizes the gains and socializes the losses. Does that sound familiar to you? But here is the part they never tell you. The problem isn't just the bailouts. That's the visible part. The real secret plan of 1913 wasn't just to create a bailout machine. It was to provide the fuel for a much larger, invisible machine. A machine that exists outside the regular economy. The bankers on Jekyll Island didn't just want a safety net. They wanted a launch pad. They wanted to be able to make bets 100 times larger than their actual deposits, knowing the public Fed would always be there to cover their losses. They didn't just want to control the visible money supply. They wanted to create a shadow money supply, a system of parasitic finance that sucks the life out of the real economy where the rules don't apply. Ringing any bells? That was the real 1913 plan. To create a system where the real power wasn't in the dollars you can see, but in the leveraged bets you can't. So, what is this invisible machine? You've heard of the banking system. You deposit your paycheck, you withdraw cash. That's the real economy. But running parallel to it, there is another system. A dark twin. It's called the shadow banking system. This system isn't made of deposits. It's made of derivatives. Credit default swaps. Interest rate swaps. Repo contracts. Rehypothecation. It's a world of financial products so complex they're basically just side bets on top of other side bets. The Federal Reserve Act of 1913 is the engine of this system. How? The act gave a small handful of banks, the primary dealers, direct access to the Fed's discount window. This is the liquidity spigot. This access acted as a guarantee. It was a secret backstop. It sent a message to the entire financial world. Go ahead. Make any bet you want. Leverage yourselves 100 to 1. Create trillions in these shadow instruments. Because if the bet goes bad, we, the Fed, will be there to print the money and save you. This is the ultimate moral hazard. The Fed didn't just insure deposits. It insured greed. The bankers on Jekyll Island knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't trying to build a stable system. They were building a casino. A casino where the house never loses because it could print its own chips. And the size of this casino? It makes the real economy look tiny. But there is one specific mechanism that ties it all together. One tool that allows a single dollar of collateral to be used to create hundreds of dollars in shadow debt. It is the hidden engine of modern finance. And it's the real secret of 1913. It's a concept so wild it sounds illegal. But it's the standard practice that rules Wall Street. And you won't believe the name they gave it. The name of the game is rehypothecation. It sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. And it's terrifying. Let's use an analogy. You take your car to a valet. You give him the keys. You own the car. He is just holding it for you. Now, imagine that valet takes your car and uses it as collateral for his personal loan. The bank gives him cash, taking the title to your car as security. But he doesn't stop. He goes to another bank and uses the same car as collateral for another loan. And another. And another. Suddenly, 10 different people think they have a claim on your one car. The valet has turned your single $30,000 car into $300,000 of his cash. This creates an illusion of wealth. But it's a house of cards. What happens when all of those banks try to call in the loan at once? They all try to seize the one car. The system collapses. That is rehypothecation. And it's what Wall Street does every single day, not with cars, but with assets. Stocks, bonds, treasuries. This is the shadow banking system. A hedge fund, the valet, has assets, your car. They go to a prime broker, one of the big Fed-backed banks like JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs, for a loan. The bank is supposed to just hold those assets. But it doesn't. Thanks to regulatory loopholes, they helped right. They reuse them. They rehypothecate them. They use them as collateral for their own bets. But it gets worse. What if the hedge fund itself borrowed the assets it gave to the broker? What if the car the valet is using was itself a rental? This is the reality. It's a chain of borrowed assets, pledged as collateral for other borrowed assets, all happening in the dark, all generating fees for the big banks, and all creating a fragile web of interlocking claims that no one, not even the regulators, fully understands. This is where the stats get insane. Statistic 1. In the US, the SEC has a rule, Rule 15C3-3, that limits this, but it still allows banks to reuse assets up to 140% of the loan's value. But that's just in the US. The 1913 plan was global. The Fed's power allowed these banks to set up shop in places like London, where there are no limits. This created the Eurodollar market, trillions of US dollars held outside the US, outside the Fed's visible rules, but inside its secret guarantee. This is the great loophole. The banks play by one set of rules on American soil and a completely different, Wild West set of rules just an ocean away, all while knowing the American central bank will save them if their foreign bets go bad. Statistic 2. Before the 2008 crisis, AIG, a single company, had written over $2.7 trillion in derivatives, insurance bets, on this shadow junk, an amount larger than the entire economy of the United Kingdom. This was an illusion. AIG didn't have the money. Nobody did. When one piece of this rehypothecated chain failed, Lehman Brothers, the global valet service, went bankrupt. Everyone tried to claim the same car at the same time. And this is the moment the 1913 secret plan was activated. The system was exposed. It was bankrupt. It was an engineered collapse. But the Fed stepped in. Ben Bernanke, the Fed chair, turned on the trillions in liquidity. They didn't bail out the homeowner. They didn't bail out you. They bailed out the valet. They bailed out AIG, Goldman, and Morgan Stanley. They printed trillions of dollars to cover the shadow bets. Statistic 3. The total commitment from the Fed and U.S. Treasury during the 2008 crisis wasn't just the $700 billion TARP plan. A Levy Institute study found the actual total in Fed loans and guarantees peaked at $29 trillion. $29 trillion. Created from nothing to plug the black hole of parasitic finance. This is the elastic money supply they talked about on Jekyll Island. It wasn't elastic for you. It was elastic for them. It was the ultimate privatization of gain and socialization of loss. The entire global financial system is now based on this illusion. Let's talk about the derivative market. This is the casino. Statistic 4. The notional value of the global derivatives market, the total face value of all these shadow bets, is estimated at over $1 quadrillion. That's $1,000 trillion. For perspective, Statistic 5. The entire global GDP, every product and service produced by all 8 billion people on Earth, is only about $100 trillion. The shadow casino is 10 times larger than the entire real-world economy. This is the system the Fed was built to protect. It's a time bomb. Every dollar you save is being devalued to provide the liquidity, the bailout money, to stop this one-quadrillion-dollar illusion from imploding. Your inflation is their stability. Your poverty is their collateral. The 1913 plan was not to create a stable currency. It was to create a backstop for a high-risk, high-leverage shadow system that sucks the wealth from the real economy. It's a system of pure greed, built on an illusion and guaranteed by your future. The 2008 crisis? That wasn't a failure. That was a test. It proved the system worked. It proved the Fed would pay the bill. So what do you think the banks did after 2008? Did they learn their lesson? No. They doubled down. The derivatives market is larger today than it was in 2008. The banks are bigger. The leverage is higher. Why? Because the moral hazard is now a certainty. They know the Fed will save them. And in 2020, during the pandemic lockdown, the system froze again. And the Fed printed another $4 trillion in months. They didn't even pretend it was for Main Street. They bought corporate bonds. They bailed out the junk debt market. The 1913 plan is working perfectly. So where does this leave us? It leaves us in the most dangerous financial position in human history. The system the bankers designed in 1913 is now global. It's instantaneous. The leverage is beyond comprehension. The next crisis won't be like 2008. It will be digital. It will be faster. The $1 quadrillion shadow system now is the system. The real economy is just a hostage to it. The Fed has one tool left, the printer. But what happens when the world stops trusting the money they print to save their friends? What happens when the nations of the world decide they no longer want to hold their savings in a currency that is printed endlessly to protect a failing casino? What happens when the dollar itself is the thing that fails? This is the ultimate danger of a system built on denial. We live in a world that denies risk because we have a central bank that promises to erase it for a select few. But you cannot erase risk. You can only transfer it. And for 110 years, the Federal Reserve has been transferring all the risk from this parasitic financial system onto you, onto your savings, onto your children's future. They are institutions built on borrowed time. And the clock is ticking. The 1913 plan was a masterpiece of financial engineering and a catastrophe of human morality. The biggest question is, are we wiser now, or are we just walking the same path in better suits? If you've made it this far, You are part of the critical few who are willing to see the truth. This is the conversation that matters. Share this video. Get this information out there. What is your biggest fear about the current financial system? Tell me in the comments. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We are just getting started. Stay awake.